The last ride of the night train. I was never superstitious. I always considered myself a practical man, someone who doesn't let legends or rumors influence him. But everything changed that night. The night the train appeared. It was one of those cold November nights when the fog blankets the streets and the air feels denser, as if something is about to happen. As usual, I was walking home after a long day at work. The station was empty, as it always was at that hour. The city seemed turned off, the sound of cars distant, and the dim lights flickering in the distance. I saw something strange as I approached the platform. There was a flickering light at the end of the track, as if a train was approaching. But it couldn't be. There were no trains scheduled at that time. The timetable had ended over an hour ago. Curious, I got closer. The fog was so thick that it was hard to see beyond a few meters. But I could make out the silhouette of a train slowly advancing toward the station. It was an old train with wooden carriages, the kind that seemed to have come straight out of a 1930s movie. Its appearance was as unsettling as its arrival in the middle of the night, in an empty station. The train stopped softly in front of me. The door of one of the carriages opened with a faint squeak. There was no conductor, no passengers in sight, but an odd feeling overcame me. Something in the air felt wrong. The fog seemed to envelop me more with every second I stood near the train. A man appeared at the door, dressed in an old-fashioned uniform. His expression was empty, as if his face were marked by infinite sadness. He stared at me intently, and without saying a word, gestured with his hand, inviting me to board. I remember hesitating, but something deep inside me told me not to refuse the invitation. I don't know why, but I climbed aboard. As I did, the door slammed shut behind me, with such a loud sound that it made me jump. Inside the carriage, the air was dense and cold. There was no one else. The lighting came from gas lamps that flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The train began to move without anyone at the helm. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe some kind of prank, but the train picked up speed, and the station began to fade into the fog. As we moved on, the sense of discomfort grew. Time seemed to stop. I couldn't see the landscape beyond the windows. Everything was covered by a thick layer of fog. I tried to talk to the man who had invited me aboard, but he didn't respond. His gaze was fixed forward, motionless, as if he could see nothing but the path ahead. I began to look around the train, searching for a clue, some sign that this had a logical explanation. That's when I saw something strange. On the walls of the carriage were strange carvings, as if previous passengers had tried to leave messages. Some said, "Don't look back." Others, "We never arrived." A feeling of claustrophobia began to take over me. Soon after, the train made a sudden stop. Through the window, I saw a station, but it wasn't one I recognized. The lights were too dim, and the platforms were empty. There were no signs, no trace of life. Suddenly, I felt pressure on my chest, as if something were squeezing my heart. I decided to get off the train, but the door wouldn't open. I knocked and knocked, but nothing. Finally, the man who had been motionless at the door slowly turned toward me. His face, once expressionless, was now covered in deep sadness. He stared at me for a long moment, and then finally he spoke in a low voice. "This is your last ride. No one ever returns from this train." My breath quickened, and in a desperate attempt, I moved to the back of the carriage. But when I reached the next station, it was no longer the same station. The fog had disappeared, and what I saw froze my blood. I was back at the same station where I had boarded. The train was no longer there. It was as if it had never existed. The station clock showed the same time I had boarded, and the air was completely still. No one saw me arrive. No one asked why I had been gone. That night, when I returned home, I tried to forget what happened. But I know now, the train somehow is still out there, waiting for those who, like me, don't hesitate to board. The last ride of the night train isn't just a legend. It's a reality that, sooner or later, we all must face. And once you board, you never come back. That's why every time I pass by the station, with the fog covering the path, I make sure not to look at the tracks, because I know the train could appear again.